Oh,
Yeah. Okay, that's Yud Zayin on top. And it's pretty, relatively easy sugis today. So the Gemara starts on the second line from the top. Or what is that? Second line from the top. Tanur Rabbanan. So this sugya talks about the davening. The davening. We're going to get back to the sugyas about Erev Tavshilin, but right now the sugya is talking about Nusach HaTfilah, how you're supposed to daven on Yantiv. So we'll see shittas that we don't hold up, and we'll see shittas that we do hold up. Tanur Rabbanan. Design of an Aleph, second line. Tanur Rabbanan. Yom Tov Shchol Yes Shabbos. If Yom Tov comes out on Shabbos, Yom Tov and Shabbos together. So how do you daven? Yeah, Shabbos has a bracha Mekadosh Shabbos. Yom Tov has Mekadosh Yisrael Basmanim. How do you do it when you have to do both of them together? B'Sham Yom Yom Mispal Shmona. Vayim Shel Shabbos B'Fnei Atzma. V'Shel Yom Tov B'Fnei Atzma. Usually there's 7 brachas. You have the first 3 and the last 3, and you have one in the middle for Shabbos, one in the middle for Yom Tov. So if you have Shabbos and Yom Tov, B'Sham says you have 8 brachas altogether. Do a special bracha for each one. Besides the first 3 and the second and the last 3, you put one bracha especially for Shabbos, Mekadosh Shabbos, and a bracha special for Yom Tov, Mekadosh Yisrael Basmanim. But we don't do that.
It's more Shabbos and less Shabbos. More about Shabbos and less about Yom.
He said you do both. He said you do both. He said you do both. A bracha for each. So this sheet is Basil. We also know how like this. It's also not familiar. He says you start with the Shabbos, end with the Shabbos. Means the Chasim is Brachat Hashem Kadesh Shabbos, which we don't do. We'll see in a minute. And he holds you just put Yom Tov in the middle of the bracha. In the middle of the nusach, he's sticking also as Yom Chag Sukkos as it. But at the beginning starts just only about Shabbos, and the end is about Shabbos. Kadesh Shabbos. Yom Tov is in the middle. And Rebbe, this is going to be what we hold. Rebbe Yom Rav Chosim Bam Kadesh Shabbos Yisrael Vazman. This is what we do. That bracha is about both. Well, we're going to daven Yom Tov Shabbos when it happens. So we go to we turn to the band of the Siddur. You don't do the regular Shabbos tefillah. You do the Yom Tov tefillah, and you insert Shabbos. And the chsim is going to be Hashem Mekadosh Shabbos Yisrael Vazman. That's what we're asking. Somebody said over the Bryce, that means the last sheet of Rebbe Shammai says you say 2 brachas, but he still says you only say 1 bracha of Shabbos, and that's inserting Yom Tov in the middle. And Rebbe said you do in the chsim also Mekadosh Shabbos Yisrael Vazman. But somebody said over the sheet of Rebbe, instead of saying Mekadosh Shabbos Yisrael Vazman, he said he just turned around the order Yisrael, then Shabbos and Zmanim. Mekadosh Yisrael, Shabbos Vazman. So he said that's a mistake, because you could ask, how come you say Mekadosh Yisrael? Just say Mekadosh Zmanim. On the Yom Tov, how come we say Mekadosh Yisrael Vazman? On Shabbos we don't say that. On Shabbos we just say Mekadosh Shabbos. And Yom Tov you say Mekadosh Zmanim. How does he get Yisrael Vazman? So the explanation is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not Mekadosh Zmanim. He left it up to us.
That's how we paskin
on the Chodesh, on Kiddush HaChodesh, whenever the Rosh Chodesh is. So that's why Zman goes together with Yisrael Vazmanim. But Shabbos is not dependent on Yisrael. You don't have to. It doesn't make a difference on Kiddush HaChodesh. It goes a cycle of 7 days since the beginning of creation. So it's not totally on Yisrael. That's what he told him.
But this coming Shabbos is going to be
Chol HaMoed. It's not going to be on it. It's going to be Chol HaMoed.
We go to the regular.
So that's going to be the next sugya. This sugya is about Shabbos and Yom Tov. Next sugya is going to be about Shabbos Chol HaMoed. So Tani Tana Kamed Ravina Mekadosh Yisrael Shabbos Vazmanim. In the last sheet of Rebbe, there was a Tana that said over the nusach that Yisrael goes first. Yisrael Shabbos and Zmanim. So if you told him that he's wrong, Amalei Atu Shabbos Yisrael Mekadosh Shabbos Am Yisrael's Mekadosh. Shabbos has nothing to do with Am Yisrael. The Zmanim do, but Shabbos does not. Well, Shabbos Mekadosh V'Kaim. Shabbos is set from the beginning of creation. Shabbos goes every 7th day. Elaima Mekadosh Shabbos Yisrael Vazmanim. Shabbos goes Mekadosh Shabbos. Hashem is Mekadosh Shabbos. Hashem is Mekadosh Yisrael, and Yisrael is Mekadosh Zmanim. So that's the nusach. That's how we do it. So that's the first sugya. What do you do when it comes to Shabbos and Yom Tov? So we pass like Rebbe according to one more line. Rav Yosef, Halacha Rebbe, Yochad Teres Ravina. We pass like Rebbe that you say in the Chsim also Shabbos and Zmanim, and the way Ravina explained that you do Shabbos, Yisrael Vazmanim. So that's how we pass. So when it comes to Shabbos and Yom Tov, you put in Yom Tov and Shabbos both in the bracha, and you end off Mekadosh Shabbos Yisrael Vazmanim. The next sugya.
But doesn't maybe say that as well? What's really
And then Rebbe, the Batunas Chois, either you say Yisrael Shabbos Vazmanim, or you say Shabbos Yisrael Vazmanim. So we've been explained that the correct gears and Rebbe should be Shabbos Yisrael Vazmanim. That's why it was quoted first, but then somebody else quoted the Rebbe differently. So Rebbe didn't explain why this is the correct gear. So that was about Shabbos and Yom Tov. Now goes about, like Moshe asked about Shabbos and Chol HaMoed. Here's the Tanur Rabbanan. Shabbos Chol Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh together. Or Chodesh HaMoed. Shabbos Chol HaMoed. What do you do? So we have to talk about all the tefillahs. Arba Shachris and Mincha, Mispal Sheva, Va'omer Mein Amor Bavoda. So Arba Shabbos and Mincha, you do the regular tefillah of Shabbos, Shabbos Chol Sheva. And where do you put in about Rosh Chodesh and Yontif, Chol Hamoed? In Avoda. Avoda means it would say, and that's what we do. That's Yalav Yavo. In middle of Avoda, the bracha of Avoda is what would say. That's where you insert Yalav Yavo. How about if you forgot? If you forget, you have to go back. You have to daven again the tefillah because you didn't say Yalav Yavo.
Sorry, excuse me, Rabbi. What is Ha'oira Ba'avuda?
Avoda means the bracha of Ritzei.
Yeah, and what is Ha'oira? How do I know that it's Yalav Yavo?
Ma'or means the happening.
The happening.
Happening means whichever happening it is. If it's going to be Sukkot or Shavuos or Pesach, that's called Mein HaMa'or, similar to the happening. And if you miss the Yalav Yavo, you do go back. Also, you just don't go back. The Gemara in Bracha says Rosh Chodesh by night. You don't go back if you forget the Yalav Yavo. But otherwise, on the Rosh Chodesh of Mincha and Mariv, Shachris and Mincha, and also Chol Hamoed, or even Mariv also. If you forget the Yalav Yavo, you go back. But we don't pass like a Bolezer. Bolezer says you insert it not in Avoda,
But in Modim.
In Modim. We don't pass like that. That would be similar like we do by Alanisim. You insert it by Modim. So he says that Yalav Yavo also goes in Modim. We don't do like that. We put Yalav Yavo in the middle of Avoda, middle of the Bracha of Ritzei. So far we're okay. We're passing like the Tanakama that you.
Why is that by Avoda? I mean, it's a small question, but you don't have to answer it now.
Why do we do it? Why do we do Yalav Yavo in Avoda? Does Rashi say anything? Rashi doesn't explain. I don't know.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't know why it should be in Hodah and why in Modim. Like it doesn't have to do with Hodah.
But we know
Yalav Yavo over there it's Hodah, but this is not Hodah. So I don't know. I don't know either one. Why do we do it in Avodah? Okay, I don't know. And how about Musaf? So before we spoke about Musaf of Shabbos and Yantif. Now we're talking about Musaf of Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos and Chol Hamoed. So what do you do now? Over Musafin.
I mean, where else would it be besides Avoda? What's more mistaber? I think it's more.
Okay, but it's interesting. Okay, but it doesn't say where else. But does it have anything to do with Avoda? Maybe it has nothing to do with Hodah either. But you're saying there's no other choice. But is there anything more than that? Does it have more than just there's no other place to put it? Or there is some connection to Avoda. We don't mention anything about Avoda there. And I'm not talking about Karbanas. In Yalav Yavo, you don't mention the Karbanas, Dafka.
I mean, what is Hayom? Because every Chag is it's.
We're talking about Ritzei. We don't mean Avoda. We Ritzei. So why is Yalav Yavo be deserve over there? I don't know. If the answer is just there's no other place, then Hodah also would be just as good. Like then there's no difference between Modim and Ritzei. I don't know. I just say I don't know. How about Musaf? Musaf of what? Shabbos Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos Chol Hamoed? Maschil b'shel Shabbos or Mosayim b'shel Shabbos. One mekiddushas hayom be'emtza.
Because the avodas would say we're asking for supplication should be merutza.
But we don't. Yalav Yavo doesn't talk about that.
No, we put in before what it would say. Right?
We're asking why does it go there? Why is it?
If they didn't say it's Ritzei, you throw it in the Sechazena, right?
Yeah, why? The question was why. What does it have to do with the bracha of Ritzei? What does Yalav Yavo have to do with that? Hashem should want us. Avoda. Want our avoda. What does it have to do with the? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Musaf? Musaf. So here it says that you do a Musaf of Shabbos, and you even finish off with Shabbos also, Mekadosh Shabbos, and you only put in Rosh Chodesh or Yantif. You put it Chol Hamoed. You put it in the middle of the bracha. So before we had a similar thing on top of the page by Musaf and Yantif. We said over there we don't pass on like just end off with Shabbos. We said that you end off with both, and that's what we do. We do like Ati Yitzhata, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. What do we do by Musaf Ati Yitzhata? And we end off Mekadosh Shabbos Rosh Chodeshim. So the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't say it. But Rashi points out that even though here it says that you Messiah B'Sal Shabbos, but he says it's dependent on the same as the above upper Gemara, the Gemara before that Rebbe argued on Bisila. This goes like Bisila. That according to Bisila, you would just be Messiah B'Sal Shabbos and start in middle. But we pass in like the Gemara before Rebbe that says Messiah B'Shal Shabbos. No, you also put Me'en HaMa'ora into the Chasima also. You also put, so that's how we do. Both by Chol Hamoed. Chol Hamoed we're going to daven also. We're going to say not only Shabbos and just put the Yantif, Sukkot or Pesach, Chol Hamoed to put it in the middle of the bracha. We're going to put it in the Chasima like we do. We do it a regular Musaf of Yantif. We do on Chol Hamoed also. Shabbos Chol Hamoed we do the same as Shabbos and Yantif, right? Am I saying correct? That Shabbos of Shabbos.
No, I thought that. Are you talking about the Musaf?
Shabbos
The
of
Musaf.
Chol We do
Shabbos of Chol Hamoed. Are you
Yes.
talking about Musaf?
more stuff, yes. We do
I
the
thought the
same.
Musaf.
I thought
Oh,
we do-
Shabbos.
We do the
isn't the
same-
Musaf? Isn't the Musaf going to be of the Yom Tov?
Same as Yantiv, yes, that's what I'm
do
saying.
regular
That we
Yom
It's
do.
the Monday. It's the Yom Tov, and you're going to insert Shabbos. I thought you were
Right.
saying the opposite.
So here it says that you only have Shabbos and you Chassimus Mekadosh Shabbos only, and you just insert Yom Tov in the middle someplace, in the middle of the bracha. We don't do like that. We do like the Gemara said before, that you say both of them, Shabbos and Yom Tov, both of them, and the Chassimus also both of them. So in the Siddur, you'll turn to the back of the Siddur and you dive on the other, what we call the Tfilah Sachang, Shalosh Regalim, and you say Shabbos also. So that's why we paskin. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher ben Yochanan ben Brocha Omrim, Kol Mokum Shehuskach L'Shava, Masal B'Shal Shabbos, Mesayim B'Shal Shabbos, Kedushas Hayom B'Emsa. He's coming to argue on the beginning of the Brisa where it talks about Shachris Mincha and Marav, not Musaf. Musaf, he agrees that you do this. You say you have 7 brachas, and the beginning and the end is Shabbos, and in the middle you still insert also Kedushas Hayom. But he says that applies to Shachris Mincha and Marav also, which we don't do. We just do like I said before, like you just put it in Ritzei. So in halacha we have good that Shabbos Chol Hamoed, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, Shachris Mincha and Marav, you just say Yal V'Yavo and Ritzei, and Musaf we put the
Yom Tov,
Chasima,
we do the
Yosef and
regular
Yom
Yom
Tov,
Tov.
and Shabbos, a Musaf of Shabbos and Yom Tov, and Musaf of Rosh Chodesh, all these are the same. That Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh you put out the Yitzarta, means he's saying both of them together. And on Yom Tov, either Chol Hamoed or on Yom Tov, you're going to say Yom Tov B'Chartanu, the regular Musaf of Yom Tov, and you insert Shabbos also. Even in the Chasim, you have both of them. Mekadosh Shabbos, Yisrael Vazmani.
I'm a little surprised because Tadir, you say Shabbos should be more Tadir. If we should do this, we must have Shabbos and add Yom Tov.
We say both of them. It doesn't make a difference what the siddur is exactly, but you're saying both of them. You say you say in the bracha you have both of them. You have Shabbos and you have everything. You have both of them. So we put equal footing to both of them. I mean, you don't pass like that pier. The pier was the one that was just mentioned now. Rabbi Shimon and Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher ben Yochanan ben Brocha, they were arguing and saying that even by Marav, Shachris, and Mincha, also you start with Shabbos, end with Shabbos, and put Kedushas Hayom in the middle. He doesn't just say that you put it in Ritzei. So we don't pass like him. By Shachris, Mincha, and Marav, we do a regular Shabbos Shmon Esrei. We just insert the Yalav Yabo and Avodah. No, so that was the end of Tefillah. So we finished. That's the end of the Sugi about Tefillah.
Oh, the Emsa.
I'm not sure why. One more line. We don't pass like that pier. The pier of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher ben Yochanan ben Brocha. We don't pass like them. The first one on the line is Hazug. That's what we just finished now. And we finished the Sugi of Tefillah. We spoke about Shabbos and Yantif, and then about Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos Chol Hamoed. So we do the way we do on the Siddur. Everything's good. That it didn't change from what the Siddur is.
Just living by the Siddur about
No, but we see here that it's not so simple. We see that this is not so simple because there were different shitas. Beishama would be different. Beishul would be different. We pass like Rebbe according to Ravina that by Musaf you start with you say Shabbos and Yantif and the whole bracha both in the middle and also at the end. And as far as Shachas Mincha and Marav of Rosh Chodesh and Chol Hamoed, you say the regular Shmon Esrei, you just insert Yalav Yavo in Avodah. And maybe it would be a nice thing to think about. What Chaim Tov's question was: is there any reason why it should be Dafka and Avodah? Rabbi Lezer held that in Hodah. We don't pass like him. Is there any big connection between the Avodah and Yalav Yavo?
In fact, it's Ritzei, except a little bit like Eliezer, it's let it be.
Ritzei B'Amcho
acceptable.
Yisrael. It's not Avodah. It's more of a
if
tefillah.
anything would fit well there.
Even though we're not talking about Avodah, the Yalav Yavo doesn't have Avodah, but he's saying any kind of a ritzoi, any kind of a Zichronenu, Fikdonenu. Okay.
Maybe this is wishful thinking, but I always thought of Yavo Yala, that all the stages that we're saying in it are like the stages of, an avoda. It's each one is getting closer, bringing closer and getting, inside more.
Okay. So that's the end of the sugya about tefillah. Now back to Erev Tavshilin and other kinds of Erev over here. The Gemara starts. So we spoke a little about the concept a little bit. But when you have 2 days Yom Tov, means in Chus Loris, that one day is really a weekday. So you have like a Mamanashat, that one day is really a weekday. So he says you can make an Erev Tchumen from one day to the next. The case would be if you have 2 days before Shabbos, Thursday and Friday is Yom Tov, or for that fact, Erev Tchumen could even be 2 days of Yom Tov alone, and you want to make Erev Tchumen for the second day. If you could do it on the first day, because Manav Shach one day is a weekday. So he says yes, that there's a Manav Shach, and therefore you can make this tonight and say if today's a weekday, I'm making Erev Tchumen, And if it's Yontif, I didn't say anything. And then the next day, if you want to carry the next day, if you want to go out of the Tchum, you can go already because you made Erev yesterday. If yesterday was a weekday, if today's a weekday, so I have no problem. And also, if you want to make Erev Tchumen for Shabbos, so you didn't make it on, you're not allowed to make Erev Tchumen on Yontif for Shabbos, but you could do it on one of these days because one of these days is a weekday. So that makes sense to us because we know that 2 days of Yontif, one of the days is a weekday.
Excuse me, I'm not quite, just in terms of the words, I don't know when it says you can place your Erev from Yom Tov. What does that mean? Like from the day before?
Yom Tov L'Chavera. There are 2 days of Yom Tov. Yom Tov L'Chavera, 2 days Yom Tov in a row. So you put it on, you're making it on the first day of Yom Tov for the next day. You can learn this, so far you can learn the Gemara.
From Yom Tov means perhaps making the Erev on Yom Tov.
Yes, for the second day Yom Tov.
Oh.
Because you have 2 days in a row in Chutz La'aretz. You have Yom Tov Sheni, so you have 2 days in a row. One day is really a weekday. You just have a suffix, you don't know which one. So you can make a Erev Tchumen from one day to the next.
Oh, I see. Thank
and
you.
also, it includes in that also, if they have Thursday, Friday, if Yom Tov is Thursday, Friday, and you want the Erev Tchumen to be for Shabbos, you can do the same thing. You put it down on the first day, and you say, if today is a weekday, I'm making Erev Tchumen for Shabbos. If not, I didn't say. If today's Yom Tov, I didn't say anything. Then the second day, you do the same thing. If yesterday was Yom Tov, I'm making the Erev Tchumen today. Then I'm making Erev Tchumen today. If today's Yom Tov, then I made the Erev Tchumen yesterday already. So you're making a 2-day Yom Tov. One of them is a weekday. So you're one of Shach, you're okay. Who said that? Rav Achi Rashi Amar Rav.
What's his problem that he did?
You're not allowed to make Erev Tchumen from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But he has 2 days Yom Tov. So one day, and one of them is really a weekday because it's a suffix. Which day is the real Yom Tov? Yom Tov Sheni, of Golos. So you're allowed to make Erev Tchumen on both days with a Manav Shach, whichever day is really a weekday. I'm making Erev Tchumen. If today's Yom Tov, I'm not making anything.
That's what they do in America.
Usually, so we'll see the Gemara here. Are you allowed to do it or not? And now, Omer Rava, the same thing applies to Erev Tavshilin. They say we had a couple of times already. If you forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, and Yom Tov came out Thursday, Friday, and it's already Thursday, it's already Yom Tov, so you can make Erev Tavshilin with it tonight. If today's Yom Tov, if today's a weekday, then I'm making Erev Tavshilin. And if today's Yom Tov, if today is a Yom Tov, I'm not making Erev Tavshilin. And then tomorrow, if tomorrow is a Yom Tov, made Erev Tavshilin yesterday. If today's a weekday, so then you don't need Erev Tavshilin. So the same thing, the same idea. First you said about Erev Tchumen, and then second Gemara says about Erev Tavshilin. You could put Erev Tavshilin from one day to the next, means there's a 2-day Yom Tov, Thursday, Friday. You can make it from one day for the next, means only one day has to have the Erev Tavshilin, and then you're allowed to cook on Shabbos. And make it tonight, that if today is Yom Tov, I'm not making Erev Tavshilin. If today's a weekday, I'm making Erev Tavshilin. So that was 2 shittas. Rav said about Erev Tchumen, you may do, and Rava said you may do Erev Tavshilin. Erev Tchumen again is to be able to walk out of 2,000 Amos. Erev Tavshilin is in order to be able to cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. The Gemara explains now, if you hold the first one, like Rav, that says even allowed to do Erev Tchumen from one day to the next, then you show you allowed to do Erev Tavshilin, because the Gemara is going to say right away.
The system that if it's today, then
Yeah, you make the Tanai. This Tanai works. Does it work for Erev Tchumen? Harsh, we no difference. Both of them is the same idea that you can't do it if it's Yom Tov, but it's a weekday, you could. So the Svar will say that there's no difference. Like the first one that says even Erev Tchumen you could do. But soon now the Gemara is going to say as far why Erev Tavshilin maybe yes, but Erev Tchumen not. Not done Erev Tavshilin, he says Dafka Erev Tavshilin of Erev Tchumen low. Why not? My time, the Miknei Shvisa b'Shabbat low. You can't acquire a place of a station of rest on Shabbos. Means when Erev Tchumen means that I'm saying this is my place, this is where I live. What does Erev Tchumen mean? You take food down the road, you put it down, you say this is where I live. And that's like being Kona Shvisa, not that you're actually buying something, but you're acquiring, this is my place for Shabbos, this is my pivot, this is my headquarters, and therefore the 2,000 amos is a radius from that new place. That's more chomer. Not that, now the Rashi explains that really it's the same suffix. One day is a weekday, so it shouldn't be a difference. But no matter what you're doing, you should be allowed to do it, because if today's a weekday, it's a weekday. I'm allowed to be Kona Shvisa. But since it's a more chomer thing, to be Kona Shvisa is more chomer than just making Erev Tavshilin, so they didn't permit it even on the suffix. So that's the machlokas. We pass like the Machmir. We pass you're not allowed to do Erev Tchumen. We pass like Rava. You can do Erev Tavshilin this tonight in the Chutz La'aretz. If you forgot to make Erev Tavshilin and have 2-day Yom Tov, Thursday, Friday, you may do the Erev Tavshilin with the tonight, but Erev Tchumen you may not. Next Gemara. Because these words here that it says the Miknei Shvisa b'Shabbata, to become a station like as if you're acquiring karka. Not that you're acquiring karka, but
and that you can't do.
Right, even though it's a suffix, it's the same suffix, it's the same one of shop. One day is a weekday. Misfor should be the same thing. But Rashi says that since it's a more common thing, so Mark even with suffix. Here's the Rashi. The Miknei Shvisa b'Shabbata. Lo itiyu lo lifnei shvisa b'yom tov afilu misafik. Okay, that's what he says. Even though it's nice, it's the same suffix. 1 day is a weekday, but he says since it's more chumrah, we don't talk about that. So the Gemara continues. Tanu Rabbana. Oh, I'm sorry. Ein ofen the Yom Tov l'Chavero. Okay, that's pashut, right? That you're not allowed to cook from 1 day of Yom Tov to the second day of Yom Tov because the first day might be Yom Tov and the second day of Yom Tov would be a weekday. So you're not allowed to cook from when you have 2 days Yom Tov. You're not allowed to prepare from 1 day to the next day because you don't know which day is the Yom Tov. Maybe the first day, your second day is a weekday. You're not allowed to prepare from Yom Tov to the weekday. Also, we just had night Rosh Hashanah. You weren't allowed to prepare from the first day to the second day. You have to wait till night and then you can start doing it. Erev Tavshin is only from Yom Tov to Shabbos, not from 2 days Yom Tov. After Yom Tov to Shabbos is more cooler, but 2 day Yom Tov we're not making. There's no such thing as Erev Tavshin for 2 day Yom Tov. So you have to wait until nightfall. You can't prepare from 1 day to the next. Here it's saying a way that you're allowed another Eitzah. People spoke about this. Maybe I'm not sure if people mentioned it, but is there a way to be able to prepare from Yom Tov to Shabbos if you did not make an Erev Tavshin?
Excuse me, and this is not part of the Brisa, right? This is the Gemara now?
I think it's still the Brisa. I think it's the Brisa. Yeah, it's still the Brisa.
Okay, thank you.
There's a way that you're allowed to cook from Yom Tov to weekday, not only Shabbos. Yom Tov to weekday. Surely you can do this for Shabbos also. But you forgot to make Erev Tavshin. What do? You fill up a pot of meat, then you put it onto the fire, even though you only need one piece of meat, because when you're putting it onto the fire, you're only doing one act. You didn't do another act. Once the pot of meat is on the fire, you can't throw in more meat that you need for the weekday. But when you're coming to put in one piece of meat, you can take many pieces of meat, put it into the pot, and then put it onto the fire. So you need the same act of putting it onto the fire. If it be one piece of meat or 10 pieces of meat. So that you're allowed to do.
That's not a tip shooting. That's just a
That's-
system.
For that, you don't need Erev Tavshin.
Right.
If you're only going to do that, you don't need Erev Tavshin because it's doing one act. There's no extra malacha that's being done. This is called like Marba B'Shurin. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you wouldn't be allowed to put in. You're not allowed to cook, and even if you had to cook for a chola, you're not allowed to add on more. I'm pretty sure. But here we're talking about that you're allowed to cook for Yom Tov, and in the same act, you're allowed to do more. That would be an eitzah if someone didn't make it.
As opposed to, it's not really giving you air to shooting.
No, it's not Erev Tavshin. You're allowed to do this for the weekday also. Even if you have a weekday, it's Yom Tov, and you want to cook for tonight, so you could put if you need one piece for now. If you don't need anything, you can't do it. But if you need one piece for now, I'm allowed to put in many pieces into the pot before I put it onto the fire, and then put the whole thing onto the fire. So then it's mutter.
Is it based on the idea that it's like a hoil that because you could get extra orchim come and need it, or not at all?
No, not because of orchim. No, because it's only one act of putting it onto the fire. Any Rashi here?
There's a Rashi, but
So you're saying that lichatchila your kavana can be completely for chol,
Yeah.
but because it's one act, you're okay.
There's one act. What were you saying, Rabbi Lezer?
no, I was going to ask the same question as
Yeah.
the good rabbi.
Not because orchim might come, but because it's one act. I'm putting it for Yom Tov, and it happens to be more on the side, but I didn't do more of a malacha because of the extra food.
That's the reason one act.
That's the reason. It's mutter. That's how we pass in. There's another application of this. Just another application. Where is that? The same thing that a baker, he has to have he needs some hot water, I guess, for after Yom Tov, or he needs for now. He's baking now on Yom Tov, and he needs a little bit of water. He's allowed to fill up a whole barrel of water just because he needs some. Because you're putting it into the oven, however he heats up his water, he's putting it in one act. The same idea. One application was a pot of meat, and one is a pot of water. Even if you only need a little bit, since you're doing it in one act. Avalefos ain't over but you can't bake more than you need because when you bake, at least in those days, they would slap each dough onto the side of the oven. So you can't do many at the same time. In our days, I would think it applies also. If you have a tray of bread, you can take the whole tray, put in a couple of loaves, because it's also one act. But in those days, they didn't do it like that. They would put it onto the side of the oven and slap it onto the wall. So each one has to have a separate tircha. So you can't do two at a time.
Second, by the logic of tircha, you can always say that adding more to the pot is also more tircha.
That's not a tircha of malacha. Just to put into the pot is not considered malacha. That's not a tircha of malacha. Just putting a piece of meat into the pot. The point is
But
more.
it's not really on tircha because it's certainly more work to add more food or more water.
So yeah, but I think the word, even the Rashi does say the word tircha, I think more it's the word like malacha. It has more to do with the word malacha, that he's doing one malacha for all.
Excuse me, Rebbe.
Yes, please.
This eitzah would also be for cooking if there were goyim there, right? Because if you're going to add something, you're cooking something for the Jew, and as long as you're cooking on Yom Tov for the Jew, then if you add more, it would be permitted even if it ends up going to a goy.
That would be true, but
On
you
Yom Tov,
wouldn't be
yeah.
allowed to. But the problem with the go, you're not allowed to invite him. You're not allowed to invite.
Not to
him.
invite him. Yeah, you can't not to
Why
invite
can
him,
you
but
not
if you
invite him? But you might throw something else into the pot after it's on the fire already. But you're right that if you would just be putting in more before you put it onto the fire, then you'd be allowed to. You're even allowed to do it to the weekday also. It's not considered doing extra malacha for him. But over there, we say don't invite a guy because you might add something onto the fire after you did already what you need.
okay, and I have an image I think of the lift in the oven.
Okay.
Does it seem like
very-
that's what this is?
Yeah. You have you see that the breads they go onto the side of the oven. If anybody wants to see it, they can go to Bukharim. Next to Musayif over there, there's still a bakery. I mean, I haven't been there many years, but they probably didn't close down. It's a good business, and people come to see how they do it. It doesn't look exactly like this, but it's the same idea. That the breads go on the side of the oven, and then you peel it off. That's how they.
And so the idea here would be that each one is its own tircha, right? That's why
Right,
you couldn't do this.
You can't do two at a time. But the way we make bread, so you put it onto a tray, so then you'd be able to do that also. You put two on a tray, or
And
three,
stick it
or
in the oven. Yeah.
three at the same time. Thank you for that. Okay. The Gemara continues. Rav Shlomo Omer, Mamala Isha. What's happening here? Mamala Isha. Kol atanu pas b'nei shapas nefa yofe bezman shatanu molei. A new heter to make bread. Even though you're doing a separate avoda, you have, like we said, you have to put a separate each dough separately. But there's a new reason that it's mutter because when the oven is full of bread, it bakes better. Now this depends on the way on the method of baking, and if it's true, nowadays it's true. If it's not true, it's not true. But in those days, if the oven would be empty, it wouldn't bake as well. The one bread that you put in. Rashi seems to say that less space there is in the oven, so then the heat becomes more intense. And if it's better for the one bread that you have to bake, it's better to have many breads inside the oven. So that also will be had to, because it's helping the bread that I need. I only need one bread. I'm allowed to put in other breads because it's helping my bread. If the fact is still true for our ovens, then it will be true. But if it's not true, then it wouldn't be a heter.
It means it's overriding the tircha because the tircha is not part of it because this is the way that's going to make the bread best.
Right. It's going to bake the bread that I do
It's
need.
going to bake better.
I need
But
one
we
bread.
did that the word malacha, not tircha.
What?
Leib keeps using the word tircha, but we came out that Rashi was lav dafka.
No, don't take me so seriously. Like I said, a suggestion, but don't change the Rashi. Like it's the right way to say it is the Rashi says, and maybe he means malacha. But I appreciate the compliment, but I don't take me so seriously.
Yeah, but if you don't say that, then you have a problem with the water.
Okay, I had a problem. I accept the problem. I guessed a good kasha. I tried, but I'm not sure. Okay, but that's the point. That one shot and one shot you're allowed to do it. That was the first heter. The second heter is that if it makes the bread better, even if you have to do many acts, and the second act really you're doing for the weekday, but since it also helps the bread that I'm doing, so that's also a heter also. Yeah.
We were satisfied with the first one.
No, the first one doesn't help for bread. Right? Bread it doesn't help. The bread you have to do a separate act each time. Yeah, that's what it says. That the bread it helps. All the bread gets baked better if the oven is full. We pass like that, and if the fact is still true, so that for our ovens, then it'll be true. But if you have to check out if that's true, does it help the oven to bake? Does the bread get baked better if the oven is full or not?
We have to go to Bukharim. We have to go to Bukharim on the Yom Tov to ask.
Okay.
We can go on Tuesday.
Okay, good. Someone forgot to make an Erev Tavshilin, so he's not allowed to prepare. He's not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. But hu nesar v'kimcho nesar, or dilma hu nesar v'kimcho nesar. He surely is not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. But how about his flour? Means does it become even his flour is also aser, and somebody else would not be allowed to use his flour or any kind of food, whatever food he has, his meat, his flour. Does his food become aser that somebody else also would not be allowed to do it for him? And if so, the Gemara is going to say right away there would be an eitzah, but you have to do the eitzah. But my nafkamina, what will be the nafkamina between these two questions? Does he have to be makna? Means if someone volunteers to cook for him, if someone else did make an erev tavshilin and he wants to cook for him his food, he doesn't want the neighbor will cook for him, but he doesn't want to have to use his own food. He wants the food of the one who didn't make the erev tavshilin. I'll cook for you, your food. But if you hold that the kamach becomes nesar, so then he only would be allowed to do that if he is makna, the one who forgot, is makna his food to the neighbor, and then his neighbor's allowed to do it because now it belongs to him, it doesn't belong to the one who forgot. So the Gemara is to say that if someone didn't make an erev tavshilin, not only is he not allowed to do malacha for Yontif to Shabbos, but even his food is not allowed to be cooked by somebody else who did make an erev tavshilin. And the only way he'd be able to do it is if it's going to become transferred to him. He's going to own it. You transfer the ownership, and then the neighbor will be able to make it because then it belongs to him. That's the question.
You do that in nothing?
Yes. But the question is, do you have to do it? Well, you don't have to do it because only the person not allowed to cook, but I'm allowed to cook his. If even the food becomes aser, in order for somebody else to be able to cook for him, he has to transfer the ownership of his food, of his kamach. But if it's only that he's asked to cook, but not that his food becomes aser, so then the neighbor could take his food, the one who forgot, and cook it for him. What's the halacha? Tashma, Raisa says, if somebody forgot to make an erev tavshilin, he's not allowed to bake, he's not allowed to cook, he's not allowed to be matman. Matman means to insulate. Nowadays we don't do this too much because we have either fire going the whole Shabbos, so we have a hot plate going the whole Shabbos. No reason to make atmana nowadays too much. But in those days, if they didn't have the fire going the whole time, the coals are going to go out. So they were matman. So you're not allowed to be matman from Yom Tov to Shabbos either. And now it says he can't do it for himself. He can't do it for others. It means the person who forgot to make erev tavshilin, he surely can't do malacha. Now it says and people cannot do malacha for him either. What does that mean? Like it says, because they can't use his food. What could he do that he should get some food? That if he transfers the ownership of his food, of his kamach, to other people, then they could bake it, then they could cook it. So that's not halacha. That not only does the person become asur to do malacha, his food is also asur to be the people should do malacha with it. So in order that people should do him a favor and cook for him his food, so he has to give it to them. He's makna, he gives over the kinyan, and then it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to him, and then they made an erev tavshilin. Then they're allowed to cook his food because not his food, is their food. But they're not allowed to cook his food either. That's the halacha also.
They're allowed to acquire on Yom Tov.
Yeah, it seems not a problem. Yes. New question. What if somebody, he did not make an erev tavshilin, and he was not supposed to cook for Yom Tov to Shabbos, but he did. Then he comes to the Rav and says, I did. Even amazed over here. He knew he's not allowed to, but he did it anyway. Does the food become asur also with the Evid? This is going to be a long sugya now, and the one was going to try to find rayas that it's asur.
In this case, we just learned.
No, new case. He transgressed and he baked. It means yes?
What's this different from Shabbos?
Oh, that was going to say that one of the possibilities. That someone did malacha here, he was not allowed to do from Yom Tov to Shabbos. If he did it, does the food become asur or not? Tashma. In case it was, well, we just finished learning that if somebody didn't make an erev tavshilin, what should he do? He should give his food over to the neighbors, and then they could cook it for him. And it says eitzes what to do. The Gemara just looks at it like the Gemara is giving you good advice. So the more thinks, why doesn't it give you the advice that if you did it, it's mutter? That's also advice. It's not telling you to do it, but it's telling you that if you did it, it's mutter. Amud beis, the isa, if it's true, if it's mutter, listen, the avavafa mutter could have said this also, that you should know that if you did, don't do it, but if you did it, it's mutter. So the more is easy answer. We don't want to tell you that if you did it, it's mutter. You're not allowed to do it. Tana to counter the terakatani, to counter the isu, lokatani. He's just telling you how's advice. Mutter advice. He's not telling you asur advice. He's not telling you that if you did it isur that it's mutter. He could have said it also that but the evidence mutter, but that's not what he's interested in telling you. So you can't be medayik that it's asur. Really, it could be that it's mutter b'diavad, but he doesn't tell you. The Brayso is not interested in telling you the list of things that mutter b'diavad. He wants to tell you what you should do. So that's not a good raya. Tashma.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. You said
if it's true that it's mutter b'diavad, why doesn't the Brayso say so? The Brayso should have told you. What do you mean?
We said you have to mark it to other people.
That's what you should do. The Brayso gives you an eitzah what to do. If you don't make an erev tavshilin, it could give you more advice. They should give you more information, a whole list of things that he should tell you, but the evidence mutter. But the Evid, if you did malacha, you weren't supposed to, but if you did, it's mutter also.
But aren't we saying even the evidence also?
No. We don't know anything. We're starting. We want to know, is it mutter b'diavad or not?
What did we say previously?
We didn't say. We asked the question. Abba Bafamai. We just started. Abba Bafamai. So the one because this.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Where did the brisa end? We got to the end of the brisa?
Yeah, the bottom line on the first page.
Umavashlim lo. That's the end of the brisa.
That's under the brisa, which was quoted a few lines earlier, 5 lines earlier. It was quoted the same thing.
Oh, I see. Same thing.
And here the Gemara just like, why doesn't it say this also? If the brisa is giving you all kinds of good advice, like a list of things to do for the person who didn't do Erev Tavshilin. A list of information that he should know what to do if he didn't make an Erev Tavshilin. Shouldn't it be in the list also with the evidence mutter? So the Gemara says, no, not dafki. He's not telling you a list of the He's telling you a list of lachatchila what you should do. If someone's going to transgress and even if the food will be mutter, the brisa doesn't necessarily have to put it in this brisa. So the Gemara doesn't see a raya. The Gemara doesn't see it any raya. Third line from the top, the Gemara tries more rise. Tashma. It says in the brisa, Mishnir Cherev Tavshilin. This is going to be a long brisa. At the end, we're going to get to what we're looking for. Tashma Mishnir Cherev Tavshilin. I raise a ofem, a vashel, a matman. Someone made Erev Tavshilin. So that's good. He's Erev Tavshilin. He's on green light. He's allowed to bake. He's allowed to cook. He's allowed to insulate from Yontif to Shabbos. It's not us of him to eat there. If he wants to eat there, go ahead, gesundheit, as they say. If you want to eat it, you can eat it. But if you eat it before you cook, so then you're not allowed to prepare anymore. If you ate it up, and now that you still didn't prepare, so you don't have the food anymore, the Erev Tavshilin is gone, so then you're not allowed to prepare anymore. You're only allowed to prepare as long as the food is there. You're allowed to eat it, but if you ate it, you're not allowed to prepare anymore. And then it says lo below. Yeah, we had that in the Mishnah. We had that in the Mishnah before, that you could. It has to be intact when you do malacha for Yontif to Shabbos. You don't have to keep it for Shabbos. You could eat it on Yontif also after you finished preparing.
Cooking.
And before you prepare, there's no issa to eat it. But if you eat it, then you lost it. Once you ate it. Now it says that if he didn't make an Erev Tavshilin, so he can't cook or bake or insulate. Lo below lo acherim. You can't do not for himself, not to anybody else. Also lo acherim often mashon lo. Nobody else can do malacha for him either. Like we said, only if they're makna. That was what the Bryce said before, that they have to be makna to him. All this we had already. Aval mevash lili yomtiv im hoser l'Shabbos. If he's really seriously cooking for yomtiv and he has leftover, that's also okay. Which we have in the Mishnah also, that if someone cooks for yomtiv and he has leftover, he could eat it on Shabbos. No Erev Tavshilin, but he really made it for yomtiv. Also good. So far, no chidushin. Now goes the chiddush. No loopholes, no harama, tricks. What does that mean? That he doesn't really want to eat for Yontif, but he's going to cook and say, I want for Yontif, and maybe take a bite. He doesn't really want to eat, and he'll say it's really for Yontif. Then he says, no, I don't eat, I'm not hungry. That's called harama. So harama zasa. That's a new thing we didn't talk about yet. That harama zasa to make, in order to cook for Yontif to Shabbos, he's going to say, I want to eat it now. Really, he knows he doesn't want to, but what? It's right there. You see it?
I see Yarin.
Yeah, hey, ayin reish mem hey. Harama. I said the word harama.
Ravashi harama. Next line.
Yeah, it's true. Next line. So here the Brisa says you're not allowed to do harama. V'mherim asa. And if you did do harama, the food is asa. That's what the Gemara wants. The Gemara thinks that if it says harama is asa, so too, if you did it b'mezid b'diavad, it also should be asa. It's not mamish the same thing, but the Gemara thinks that it's comparable. The same way it says in the Brisa that if someone should not do harama, he should not do a trick and say that he says that he's doing it for Yontif. He really is not. He doesn't need it for Yontif, and he's full already. And he says, I'm going to eat something, makes a big pot of food, and then he says, I'm not hungry, and then he has it for Shabbos. That you're not allowed to do. And if he did it, even the evidence asa. So the Gemara thinks that if Haram is asa b'diavad, so too the mezid is asa b'diavad. That's what the Gemara thought. And Rav Ashi is going to say it's not the same. Rav Ashi Harama karamid shani Harama tachmir ba'abanan temi mezid. It could be that Haram is worse than mezid. Rashi says because mezid nobody's going to learn from him. He didn't have he knows that he's in Russia and he'll do tshuva one day, but he's not going to learn from there that you're allowed to do it again. But by Harama, the Chachamim are more scared that once you have a loophole, people will think that you're allowed to do a loophole. Then that's what he said. It's also even with the Evid. So we did get more information over here that Harama is also, and it's also even with the Evid. But the Gemara still does not feel that it has a raya. What's the din if somebody did b'mezid? Is it also the Evid or not? So we're still on the lookout for this question. If somebody cooked b'mezid from Yontif to Shabbos, he knows you're not allowed to. He forgot to Erev Tavshilin and he cooked anyway. Is it mutter or not? We're still continuing. We got to fill the word mezid so far. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar, Rav Yitzchak has a different rejection of this proof, even if this Brisa does say that Rambam is Aser, and even if you do compare and say that means Mezid is Aser, it's still not a raya to our question, because Amani Hananya here, I'll give you the Beishamai. We're going to find right away in the next couple of lines, Beishamai is very machmir by Erev Tavshilin, and the Gemara doesn't talk about this case, but the Gemara says, since you see Beishamai is machmir by Erev Tavshilin, so the Gemara is going to say that he might hold the Diavad Aser, of our Vafa is also Mezid, but it's not going to be a proof to Beis Hillel, who's not so machmir by Erev Tavshilin. So even if you did find a Brisa that says that B'mezid it's Aser, it's not a proof to our question according to Beis Hillel. The Gemara is not going to find B'ferish of Beishamai is machmir in this point, but it's going to find a different point that Beishamai is machmir in Erev Tavshilin, and the Gemara is going to say, therefore maybe he's also machmir b'diavad, but it's not going to be a proof to Beis Hillel. Maybe Beis Hillel is still going to be making b'diavad, so therefore the Gemara is still looking for the right. What do you see? But what does Beishamai hold? The Tanya, Hananya Omer, Beishamai Omer, ein ofen. I just want to make a alert that this Gemara coming up might be an issue about why we have a matzah. People take a matzah and an egg for Erev Tavshilin. So the question was the other day that an egg should be enough. And any kind of food, cooked food, you don't need any baked food. So that's going to be based on this Gemara here. So if anybody wants to find out about that, it's over here. The Tanya Chananya Omer, Shama Yomim, ein open elam kain Erev Pas, bein bevashel elam kain Erev Tavshil, bein tomlin elam kain no yuchanan tunim Erev Yom Tov. Beisham is very machmir by Erev Tavshilin. They hold that you have to have, for each kind of preparation, you have to have started that preparation. If you want to bake on Yom Tov, you have to have baked before Yom Tov Shabbos. You have to have baked before, you have to have something baked. If you want to cook, you have something which is cooked before Yom Tov. If you want to insulate, you have something insulated before. Each kind of malacha has to have another kind of Erev Tavshilin. And Beis Hillel says not. Beis Hillel Omer ma'arev the Tavshil lechad b'osav b'achol tzak. All you need is a cooked food. You don't need anything else. So what did the Gemara find in this brisa? Nothing about the subject about b'mezid, b'mezid, vafa, but you do find the Beishamai is machmir by Erev Tavshilin, and therefore the Gemara says same way is machmir over here as far as making a special kind of Erev Tavshilin for each kind of malacha. So maybe he's also going to be machmir on mezid, vafa, but it's not a proof to Beis Hillel. Agav, what is? I'd like to stop for a second. A footnote that Agav, what does it say over here? That you don't have to have a baked food in order to Beis Hillel. Point of we have Baslan Beis Hillel. You don't have to have a big food in order to cook. So why should we do that? Why should we have that? Why should we? So there's
I mean, are we doing like Beishamai?
so no, we don't. Right, we don't do right. So we don't do like Beis Hillel, right, like Beishamai. So here Taisus talks about it, and he says Pirish Rashi, according to Beis Hillel, one tashel is good enough. The most going to pass like that soon. The Dibra Masel, but Taisus Bizdan Rabbeinu Tam says if you want to bake on Yom Tov, you do have to have a baked good. This is the Rabbeinu Tam Shita. So he says not, even though our Gemara says, but he says that there's a Gemara earlier that said Rabbi Lezer says Ein ofen ela ala afui, ein mevashin ela ala mavushel, and he says our Gemara is just coming to paskin against Beishamai as far as Atmana goes. That's what Taisus says. There are three things: Bishal, Afiyah, and Atmana, and he says our Gemara does paskins like Beis Hillel as far as you don't have, but as far as Atmana, but as far as Afiyah, Taisus says you do have to have. Taisus ends off, just to jump to the end of the Taisus. Taisus says that even though here's Taisus here at the bottom of the page, Taisus brings proof that it's not true, but he ends off when we come up on Momari Lamalani Libi Lavar Al Divrei Dodi. The Re said that I'm not, I didn't have enough audacity, whatever, to argue on my uncle. That's Rabbeinu Tam. That if you do want to bake, you have to have baked good. And that's the minhag. The minhag is if you want to bake, to have a baked good also. Minhadin you don't. Minhadin you don't have to, because the Gemara we pass that a tavshil is good for everything, but like our pashas of our Gemara. But there are those where Ben Tam was machmir, and the Re argued. He brought a fair shavai against him. But he says, my uncle said so. I'm not going to argue. And if you do want to bake, you have to have a baked good before. That's the minhag where it comes that people do have a matzah also when they make erev tavshilin. But minhadin you don't need it. You don't have to have a matzah. You can have a challah, anything baked. But minadin you don't have to. But
because we do hold by Beis Hillel.
Not like a Rebbeinu Tam. Minadin you don't pass like Beis Hillel, like the Rebbeinu Tam. And even if you want to bake on Yom, if you're allowed to, just having a cooked food also prepared. And the other places is machmir to do like a Rebbeinu Tam, at least for a chumrah. You know, not really the halachas like him. He brings a right against him, but he says I'm not going to do against him because he said so. But even for that, just to point out, it's all, even if you want to be machmir, it's only if you plan on baking on Yom Tov. But if you don't bake on Yom Tov, which most people don't nowadays, so then you wouldn't have to. Then there's no reason to have a prepared a matzah. It's only if you want to bake. If you just want to cook, well, most people always cook on Yom Tov Shabbos, so then there's no reason to be machmir at all, as far as I know. It's only if you want to bake, so then also you don't have to, but then there's a chumrah to have a baked good also prepared. Okay, so we're still on the lookout for this halacha of mezid. If somebody had made no erev tavshilin and he transgressed and he cooked from Yom Tov to Shabbos, is it mutter b'diavad or not?
Concerning Shabbos, we have all these young terms of shittas of ein bishul after bishul, ein afiyah after afiyah. It's machlekes and afiyah. How do we apply that to quote unquote Yom Tov erev tavshilin?
Nothing. On Yom Tov you're allowed to cook. On Yom Tov you're allowed to cook.
For Shabbos.
Yom Tov you're cooking mamish. You're not taking a bishlah. You're taking a raw food and you're cooking it. On Yom Tov to Shabbos you're allowed to cook. After you have erev tavshilin, you're allowed to cook. You take a raw food and you cook it. Mamish. There's not the whole din of Shabbos is it's not called cooking, but now we're talking about you're cooking. You're cooking, you do all kinds of malach. You're making a fire, you're cooking. No, yeah.
And let's. So if you already have a challah, you already have a matzah.
What does it mean? You have to. Erev means you have to have prepared from before Yom Tov to Shabbos. So you don't have to have to bake it. You can go to the bakery also. You get a bake. You get a piece of or cooked food, whatever it is. You don't have to cook it yourself, but you have something which is cooked already, and you put it aside. You say this is going to be for Shabbos, and you say Badei Rubi. You can say it in Aramaic or in Hebrew or in English that this erev is going to be mutter for us to cook on Yom Tov to Shabbos, and you say bracha to Hashem, Hashem to Shabbos erev, and you put it aside. Then you don't eat it until you finish preparing Yom Tov to Shabbos, and then you let it cook mamish. The Gemara continues. Tashma. We still didn't find it right yet. There's a b'diavad if somebody did malacha Yom Tov to Shabbos without erev tavshilin, is a mutter or not? Ama'aseh perosa b'Shabbos. This is what this Rabbi Lezer asked before. Ama'aseh perosa b'Shabbos b'shogeg yochel b'meizel lo yochel. Somebody did Isser Rabbanan. Here's Isser Rabbanan to be ma'aseh, to be magvia, and trumas and maestros. You're not supposed to tie it on Shabbos, but somebody did. It's a tikkun. You're not supposed to do it. It's a mishnah. You're not allowed to do it. He did. So is it usher or not? So it says if somebody is master on Shabbos, if he did it b'shogeg, you're allowed to eat it. But if he did it b'meizel, you're not allowed to eat it. So the Gemara thinks the same way that it says over there that if you did this malacha, it's not malacha deraisa, malacha derabbanan, Yom Tov to Shabbos. On Shabbos, that you're not allowed to eat it b'diavad. So too, the Gemara thinks over here also you shouldn't be allowed to eat it if you cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos. The Gemara says, "Lo tzricha this like peri achmini." Maybe over there only machmir that he shouldn't eat it even by Shabbos if he doesn't have anything else to eat. Then, but if you have nothing else to eat here, erev tavshilin means he has nothing else to eat. He's not going to be able to eat on Shabbos. So then maybe we're not machmir even over there also. The person who's master perosa and he doesn't have what to eat, maybe b'diavad will be makel also. So the Gemara doesn't think it's a raya yet. Tashma, another similar raya. I'm matbul kaleb b'Shabbos b'shogeg yishtamish ben b'meizel lo yishtamish ben. You're not allowed to be matbul kaleb. Like tomorrow sugya, you're not allowed to immerse kalem in the mikvah on Shabbos. Also because it's kind of a tikkun. If you did, if it was only b'shogeg, you're allowed to use it. But if it was b'meizel, you're not allowed to use it. So the Gemara thinks the same thing. That here that you didn't make an erev tavshilin and you cooked from Yom Tov to Shabbos also with b'meizel, it should be aser. The Gemara says again, maybe it's because you have another choice.
Are these mishnayot? These are the rayas that we mentioned.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's mishnayos and trumas. But this like money achmin. It could be a mishnah also sometimes. I think there's a mishnayos.
Really?
I'm pretty sure it's a mishnah, but yeah, it says on the side. Trumas perik beis mishnah gimel. It says it's a mishnah. Tashma matbil.
Because there's a gears there. It's none, right?
Yeah, but you have to have a tashma because it says tashma is because being a right. Just to say the tanan is not good. You have to okay, tanan also would be, but they changed it to tashma because it's being a right. But the ma'aser is a mishnah over there. But surely amatbil, I think amaser also. But here it says on the side by this amatbil, it says trumas. Matbil kela b'Shabbos b'shogeg yishtamish ben. We did that right already. So the Gemara says no, it's not a right. Let's read this like money achmini. The case is only mut usher. There it says that it's usher b'diavad. If you immerse the kelim on Shabbos, b'meizel it's usher to use it. Maybe only if you have other kelim. It's like kelim. It's like money achmini. He has no other kelim to use, so he's not stuck. Over there you could borrow somebody else's kelim. Just because we're going to ask him to use the kelim doesn't mean that he's stuck. But over here, tavshilin, if you don't allow him to eat it, so he has no food. Maybe he'll be make even. Amazing. So still no raya. Now comes the last and final raya. It's possible for another possibility for him to get kelim is from borrowing from somebody.
Right.
Either the case is my skin and he has other kelim, or you can go next door and borrow somebody's kli. So that's why we're not making good to use the kelim that he immersed. But over here by Erev Tavshilin, if he doesn't have another choice, maybe we'll allow him to eat it b'mezid, even though you did it b'mezid. And the last raya, Tashman, B'vashli b'Shabbos b'Shogi Yochel b'mezid lo Yochel. Somebody cooked, Mamish Mlacha Daraisa. He cooked on Shabbos. Is he allowed to eat it? The Shogeg, he's allowed to eat it, but if he did it b'mezid, he's not allowed to eat it. So the Gemara thinks again that if he did it b'mezid, he's not allowed to eat it. So being a right here also that he cooked for Yom Tov to Shabbos, he's not allowed to eat it b'mezid. If he did it b'mezid, the Gemara is matchidus also. You see what the Shabbos shani. Shabbos is more chomer than Yom Tov. Here, Shabbos over there he did mamash malacha. He cooked on Shabbos. Over here, he cooked for Yom Tov to Shabbos, which is not. First of all, he said that it's only a Rabbanan because with the rice he would be allowed to cook for Yom Tov to Shabbos either because kedusha achas or because guests might come. It's only a Rabbanan, and also Yom Tov is also not chomer like Shabbos. It's a salav, it's not a skila. So the Gemara went through all the rice, and the Gemara didn't find the right that it's aser. And the post can say, therefore, but is mutter.
I thought Shabbos we don't even the shogeg we don't eat it until after Shabbos. We don't have to wait.
So right, so there's a machlokes about all that. There's a
Whereas if
Huda,
it's
Rav Meir.
amazing you can never eat
Right.
it.
There's a
That
machlokes.
person
There's
who did
different.
it can never
Right, so there's different shittas of Meir, Rav Yehuda. What you called it is right. There's such a shita. It says there is a shita that's makel even for the person himself to eat it. But the Gemara doesn't go into all that over here. You're right. It's a good sugya, but here it doesn't talk about it. I just want to say that b'mezid you're not allowed to eat it, and that's a right. They shouldn't eat it here either. And the Gemara's matcha, maybe Shabbos is more chomer, and the Gemara ends off with that it's not a raya. So the Gemara went about 5, I didn't count, about 5 or 6 rayas, and all of them the Gemara's matcha, no raya, and therefore the halach is, and therefore the poskim say, but yeah, but you could be makel. So no one should do it, of course. You're not allowed to be amazing. But if somebody did, then he comes to ask you a question that he knows that there's no Erev Tavshilin, but he couldn't hold back, and his Yetzer Hara got him, and he cooked Yom Tov to Shabbos. Now he does tshuva. Am I allowed to eat it? So the halacha is yes, you're allowed to eat it. Next halacha. Beis Shammai Omen. Now I talked about in the Mishnah how big is Erev Tavshilin. So Beis Shammai says two foods, 2 cooked foods. Beis Hillel says 1 cooked food. Our mission is against the following verse at the time. We had this a few times already in the Mesechus Beitza that Rav Shimon ben Elazar had a different version of Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So here it goes again. Rav Shimon ben Elazar is different. Everybody agrees you have to have 2 cooked foods. Because even Beis Hillel knows you have to have 2 foods for Erev Tavshilin. If you have this fish together with an egg, is that considered 1 food or 2 foods? Everyone else you have to have 2 foods. Is this considered 2 foods or 1 food? That you have to have 2 foods, and this is not considered 2 foods. But that this is that.
At least it qualifies for 1 tafshil.
It means to say that it's good enough. Okay, the words are a little bit hard over here, but it means Beis Shammai's machmir says it's considered 1. It's a little difficult. Some have a different gear, but the idea is to say Beis Shammai's machmir and say that the Dagu Beitz Shalom is not good enough. It doesn't meet the requirement of Shnei Tavshilin. Beis Hillel says that's good enough. How it fits into the words?
I'm sorry. Beis Hillel says it's 1. I'm reading the wrong place.
Yeah, you're reading the words, and the words sound like you. The way you read the words, it comes up Beis Hillel's machmir that it's considered 1 and it's not good enough. So they say that doesn't mean that. It means to say that Beis Hillel is the one who's making. How does Rashi explain over here? Beis Shammai say you have to have 2, and this is not 2. And Beis Hillel says this is good enough. This one is good enough. The words are a little difficult. She talks about it the different gears, maybe. But the idea is that everyone agrees you have to have 2 foods. And the question is this fish and egg, is it considered 1 or 2? And here Beis Shammai is going to be Mach Beis Hillel's Mekel, but Beis Hillel also holds you have to have 2 foods. The Shavin, She'im, Pirper, Beitza, V'nosan, L'sof Dag, or Shevisa, Kaflutos, V'nosan, L'sof Dag, She'en Shnei Tavshilin. Even the one who's Machmir by a big egg and a fish, does it? That's a good enough how they made it exactly. But he says if he mamish Pirper Beitza, that means like he crushed an egg. That he took a cooked egg and a cooked egg and he crushed it up and he put it into that's surely going to be considered 2 foods. And also we say kaflutos. Kaflutos Rashi says means cress. That's cress. And he put it into the fish. Also, that's considered 2 tafshilin. So okay, this is not like this.
Ingredients put into 1 tafshil. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. So there's some kind of I don't know exactly how they made this fish and egg together, but there was something that was considered maybe 1 tafshil. Maybe now that you made it, it's considered 1 machlokes, and then there's another kind of a fish and egg that's only considered 2, and the cress also is considered not part of the fish.
I made eggs separately. I I made the fish separate, then I put them together.
Okay, and if you made it like if
But I
scrambled
made them
egg on
together
it,
as a stew,
then it's
maybe
only
not.
one. Okay, anyway, the more Paskins, that's not relevant. I'm a Rava, Hilchos HaKatan, done, leave it to be. Still, the Pas like Katana. Katana says, according to Beis Hillel, all you need is one tafshil. You don't need two. Not like Shimon Ben Elazar, all you need is one. That's why Paskin, one tafshil, a kazayis of one tafshil, and it's good for baking and atmana and everything. Just have to have a kazayis of one tafshil. The Mishnah
Excuse
is-
me, when you were saying the Beis Hillel says that when the egg and the fish, it's good enough to be, when it says one, that means that what? It's considered two and it's enough to,
Yeah, that's
I don't
what
get it. I'm not sure. I
Yeah,
missed
yeah,
it. Why is he
yeah.
machmir?
He's makel, and he's being makel. But still being makel says it's good enough.
Yeah, he's being made. Oh, I thought I heard you say machmir.
No, I didn't mean to. If I did, then I didn't mean to. Beis Hillel
Okay,
is
he's
one-
makel. He says you only need one, and the egg and the fish is one, and that's considered enough.
Yes, usually you need two. He also agrees usually you have to have two, but this is considered two, and this one is good enough.
This one is considered two, and he's makel
Yes.
for it.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you. Okay, okay.
Have you learned the Rashi? The end of the Rashi. That he says, Beis Hillel, died the tafshil echad v'zeh.
This one is good enough. This one is good enough.
So
This
in other words, the egg and the fish are one.
and it's what does it mean it's one? It's good. It's considered two. That's why it's good. It's good. This is considered good. This is considered two. One of this is good. This is a 2 in 1. That's good enough. Okay, but the Ma'aseh passing like our Mishnah that says according to Beis Hillel, all you need is one. You don't need two. You don't need 2 in 1. You just need one. That's how you
Any kind
passing.
of fish cake or any kind of meat, you know.
The Ma'aseh passing only need is one. We don't have to get into it too much because we passing that one is good. Fish, no egg at all. Just the fish alone. Because ice of fish is good enough. Because ice of shamlunis of schmaltz is good enough. Amr Abaya. Now,
What's not to be in terms of Tishabak,
we hold over there that you're not allowed to have two foods. You only allowed to have one food. And over there's a question if a fish and egg is considered one or not. But you only allowed to have one food over there. Amr Abaya and Aktina and Hiskil Beisasa V'Nachal Yuvov Gomer. The Paskin, even though it says in the Mishnah that if you ate after Tafshilin or got lost before you cooked, you're not allowed to cook anymore. But Abai says that we have a Masorah that Paskin that once you started making the food, you started making a dough, even though the egg got eaten up while you're preparing, you're allowed to finish. The thing that you started doing, you're allowed to continue since when you started before when the egg was still intact. That's the end of the daf for today. And the halachas come out that we daven the way we do, that Musaf of Yontif and Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, you insert Shabbos and Yontif both, and also the Chasima also, as far as Shachas Ben Chamar and Rosh Chodesh Shabbos and Shabbos Chol HaMoed. So Shachas Ben Chamar is a regular weekday Shmon Esrei that you insert Yalav Yavo in Avoda. The next Gemara spoke about making not Yontif, but Chol HaMoed, yes. And then the next sugi was about making a Tanai on 2 days of Yom Tov. Even though one day is a weekday, you're allowed to make a Tanai with Erev Tavshilin, if it comes on Thursday, Friday, but you're not allowed to make a Tanai with Erev Tchumen, because we pass him like Rav, that's Machmir, that it looks, it's Miknei Shvisa, and therefore it's usher on, even though one day is really a weekday, we're Machmir not to make a Tanai by Erev Tchumen. After that, it spoke about if you did one act to cook for Yom Tov and the weekday, it's mutter. And that would be like a pot of meat. You put the whole pot at one time, the whole thing of water at one shot, then it's mutter. But bread, let's say that you have to do one at a time, so it's usher. There is a sheet that says we pass like that if it makes the one bread bakes better if you have a full oven, then it's mutter to do it also. But I don't know if that mitzvah still applies by us. After that, the Gemara says that not all, the person who didn't make an Erev Tavshila, not only does he become usher to cook, but his food also becomes usher. If anybody wants to cook for him, he can't use his food unless he's makneh to him. The one who forgot is makneh his food to the neighbor, and then the neighbor is allowed to cook that food, but if not, he wouldn't be allowed to do it. The last sugi was about offer of offer. If somebody transgressed and baked from Yom Tov to Shabbos that he wasn't allowed without Erev Tavshilin, so it was a mutter b'di'evet. The Gemara trying to bring many rights that it's usher, but the Gemara was not successful, and the poskim say that therefore it is mutter b'di'evet. Of course, don't be amazed, but if he did, so he'd be allowed to eat it b'di'evet. The Gemara in between also spoke about Harama, came in that you're not supposed to do Harama, and Harama is also even with the Eved. We had a couple of Gemaras about doing Malach on Shabbos, not supposed to be Maaseh, you're not supposed to be Matbil, and if somebody did with the Eved, it's Asa, but the Gemara says maybe it's only Asa if he has another choice. If he has no other choice, he has to have other foods. Maybe it would be Mutter with the Eved. I don't know what the Poskim say about that. As far as Mavashal Shabbos, also it says that it's Asa with the Eved, he did it in Mezid, but that's only Shabbos. But Yantif, to Shabbos, the Gemara says, the Gemara doesn't say it's not a Raya, and the Poskim say that you could be Mekel. The list Gemara says that says in the Mishnah, according to Beisilel, it's mutter one tafshil. There was others that said no. He also you have to have two, just that an egg and a fish is considered two. Or we pass on like our Mishnah that according to Beis Hillel, one is good enough. And the last thing was that even though if your food got finished before you made the Erev, you're not allowed to do the Erev anymore. But if you started doing the Malacha, you're allowed to finish. You're allowed to finish whatever you were doing. You started making a dough, you're allowed to finish the dough. I don't think you're allowed to start other things more. But the thing that you started, you're allowed to finish, even though the Erev got eaten up in between.
He didn't know at the beginning when he started doing the malacha that the Arab shouldn't got eaten up before.
No, didn't know. No, he doesn't say that. He started doing it, and then somebody ate it. He's doing his dough, and then the kid takes the piece of fish and he eats it. So then he's not a finished.
Tomorrow and
No, tomorrow's just Daf Yomi. Now till after Sukkot is just Daf Yomi.
and then doing Chalamoid.
Excuse me, Rebbe. Can you read?
We'll talk about it more, but so far, yes. Yes, please.
Can
Dave,
you please reiterate the last thing that Abaya said? I didn't
Naktina,
get that.
we hold. Naktina means we hold, or we have a Masorah, that Hischel B'Yisasa, if he started his dough, and his Erev got eaten up, while he was doing the dough, the Erev got eaten up, he's allowed to
Finish, and once he started, even if he didn't finish cooking, he didn't
Right.
bake obviously, but since he
Right.
started the dough, it's a very makel position.
Right. So I
Okay,
think it
thank
was
you.
only that particular dough that he's doing, not that he could take another dough now.
Yeah. The one he's doing, and it got eaten while he was doing it.
He's allowed to finish doing that dough.
So how about the same thing would be like he's chopping meat or something?
Shopping, I guess so. Yeah, whatever he started doing, he was allowed to finish
He
doing.
started doing something. Okay,
I
thank you.
imagine, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Shavuot tov.
Yashikor, everybody. Thank you. Shavuot tov.